My name is Rick Legatt, and in 1984 I was living in Cambridge, and I was active in the Labour Party, and I joined the miners' support group at the suggestion of Tony Carter, who I knew well because I'd been his election agent for two elections. I remember going along to lots of meetings of the miners' support group in the Alex Wood Hall, and I got involved in the usual activities, shaking buckets outside the Guildhall and so on. I think the first particular small contribution I made was I got some T-shirts printed. I found a good joke somewhere. I thought it was a good joke, which unfortunately I forgot what it was now. But it was a cartoon, and I got Peter Fluck, who was one of the Spitting Image creators. Him and Roger Law lived in Cambridge, and he was a close friend of my neighbour's. So through my neighbour, I persuaded Peter Fluck to draw an image, and we had an appropriate joke on it. And then I was trying to, as well as collecting money in the guild outside the Guildhall, I was selling T-shirts as well. Later on, my main involvement was hosting miners' families who came down for a few days or a week to stay, just to get a break from the grind of the strike. The first family who came and stayed with me in my house here, because I've been living in Cambridge in the same house, which is near the middle of Cambridge, so it was a good location for them, close to the Alex Wood Hall, which was a headquarters, close to all the cinemas and the parks and so on in Cambridge. And the first guests were Doreen and Pip Humber and their family. Doreen was a very remarkable woman. It's a common story of women just leading an ordinary life and then suddenly getting involved in a much bigger incident. And she was going off to London and making speeches at big rallies and made quite an impact in the miners' strike. And I really enjoyed meeting them and their family. And there was quite a culture clash between Cambridge and the miners and families from Nottinghamshire. I remember that Doreen really didn't want to eat anything that she wasn't familiar with. So whereas Pip had much more of an attitude, I'll eat anything. In fact, he told us stories of in the past he'd sampled such delicacies as sheep's eyeballs. Well, I couldn't provide him with any of them, but any of the sort of funny stuff that Doreen wouldn't eat, like hummus or taram salata, Pip was always ready to have a few spoonfuls of. The other family that stayed here was Dennis Brown and his family. Dennis was known for some reason that escapes me as Pip, so there was two Pips in this story, but I'll call him Dennis, and I think he was the secretary of the NUM branch in Blydydd, so he was right at the centre of the action, arranging for pickets to come and go and all that sort of thing. I think it was Dennis that first started bringing various bits and pieces down, various souvenirs of the strike, lots of the badges. Most of the miners wore lots of badges of the miners' strike and the 1 year dispute and so on their hats or on their coats. And then they started making some mugs as well. And there's a well-known logo of the Notts Miners, and there's several mugs that I've got like that. A sort of typical sized mug. This one in cream, which we'll show you. And there's a miniature mug, but also a large mug, which was a special edition, which has got the name of the particular colliery, Blydydd, written on it. And that was given to all the miners who stayed on strike for the whole duration of the strike. So it's an honour for me to have that mug. And later on, I also got a few Labour Party mugs and other mugs, and that started off a collecting habit. And in the end, I collected several hundred mugs. The whole house really became a mug museum. Later on, I guess after a few years, I decided I needed to redecorate, so all the mugs went in the attic. They've recently come out for an exhibition at the Cambridge Museum. They often invite us back to Blydydd, and I didn't go out on the picket lines, but I did go up at the weekends when they had socials. And it was always amusing because when a social event was called, all the Cambridge contingent would be there in scruffy old clothes, denim jackets and whatever, but the miners would all get dressed up, so they'd all be looking, so you could always tell the miners and their families, because they were so smart, wearing suits, and the women all glammed up as well. So it's quite a different culture shock for how you socialise as well as what you eat. And other things. They've arranged a trip down into the mine shaft for us. I don't quite know how they arranged that when they were in dispute with their employers, but they did. And so we got into the mine and went down. I think that was probably the first time I'd been in a mine, and it's a long way down. And I seem to remember it being quite clean when you walked around until you actually got to the coalface. That's where the reality struck. And on the way back, the miners, they have this checking system, and they handed their checks over when they got out of the pit at the top. And I remember Dennis Brown fooling me. He told me that they were tipping the lift man, and I believed that for many years till I found out about the checking system. I supported the miners because they were really the leading edge of the resistance against Thatcher and everything she stood for. It was clearly, she'd prepared the ground for the fight with the miners, and she wanted to destroy the miners so she could destroy the whole trade union movement. And that the Conservatives still have that attitude today with their actions. Not so long ago, when they made people pay for taking, or pay a fee to take cases to the industrial tribunals, which fortunately has been overruled by the Supreme Court. But it's a never-ending battle for workers' rights, and it's very much the poorer without the NUM as a major player. The strike that's remembered, the famous strike, was in 1984 to 85, but as Scargill forecast, that wasn't the end of the battle. The plan for the Tories was a shutdown of the pits, and there were more closures were scheduled in 1992, and the Cambridge Miner Support Group was reformed at that time. And the main activity that I remember was a march in Huntingdon, which was the home of the then Prime Minister, John Major, who was the MP for Huntingdon. And we arranged a rally in Huntingdon, and then we marched to John Major's house. And amongst the speakers was the Mayor of Cambridge, various trade unionists, and the leading speaker was Jeremy Corbyn. The Miners' Support Group was a different experience from my previous experience as a Labour activist, because it drew in people from the left, from all sorts of different parties and groups. So within the Miners' Support Group there were probably a majority of members of the Labour Party. There were also members of the Communist Party, Socialist Workers' Party, Workers' Revolutionary Party, University Left, quite a strong contribution from many university members. So it was all quite a melting pot, and all really working for what we saw as the common good. I remember the officers of the Miners' Support Group. I remember Lucy Munby, who was a teacher at Long Road Sixth Form College. She looked a picture of everyone's favourite granny, but she was really, really tough and well organised. Ethel Shepherd was another one of the members. I think they were the two officers who looked after the money and chaired the meetings. And yes, it was good. People from different party groups mainly stuck together, but on the whole we rubbed along with each other quite well. There's a couple of mugs that I'd like to talk about. This one is a oversized mug, a tankard, and this is the typical logo of the NUM strike with Nottingham. This is from the Nottingham, from the pits in the Nottingham coalfield. But this particular one has also got the name of Blydydd Colliery that was twinned with Cambridge, and I believe that this mug was specially produced for the strikers who stayed out throughout the whole strike till the end of through the whole period of the strike. So I'm very proud to have a copy of that. Another mug that I would like to talk about is this one, which celebrates women in action in the miners' strike, because the women, the families were very much affected when the the miner. Of course, it's an all-male profession in terms of working below ground, but when the miner is on strike, the whole family is affected. There's no money coming in. The women were in charge of the feeding stations in the local social club, and the children are involved as well. And this one is says on the back, a tribute to the women of the coalfields. This commemorative mug is a tribute to the women of the coalfields and the miners' support groups throughout the country. So it's nice to have got that acknowledgement, both of the women and of the miners' support groups. I'm glad I got involved, because otherwise I didn't have much involvement with the trade union movement. So it was good to see trade unions in action. I should have mentioned that the trade unions, there were also trade union representatives, people who are primarily trade union activists, were at the miners' support group, and obviously to meet the people from Nottinghamshire and see their different perspective on life.